We're going to get rolling here. For those of you who have joined us for the first time, we'll do a couple quick announcements. We love our hosts here at the Knights of Columbus, and so they also have available anytime during the meeting coffee, tea, soft drinks, beer, wine, even some other things. No coffee? Okay. Like I said, they have available only... No, I'm just kidding. So let's get the meeting starting. I want to welcome you to our August meeting of Campaign for Liberty. How many people is this is your very first Campaign for Liberty Harford County meeting? Wow, phenomenal. Let's give this a hand. That's great. I'm Lowell Sheets, just one member of the steering committee. They just put me up front here because no one else wants to do it. And we're going to start our meeting off with prayer and with the pledge to the flag. So if you would join me and stand up for our prayer. Dear Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for life, for health, for the blessings of liberty that you've bestowed upon us. We pray that you would empower us to be bold and courageous, to defend that liberty, to defend your principles, and to honor you in everything that we do, and say this night and this coming week and this month and in the years that you give us, pray that we might preserve this freedom. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. For those of you who are new here tonight, we have some phenomenal speakers. There's a chance for some of you to be speaking who have signed up for our open mic time. But I'm just going to give you a little bit of introduction to who and what Campaign for Liberty is. And to borrow from Judge Napolitano, just want to ask a few quick questions. What if Democrats and Republicans were two wings of the same bird of prey? What if the establishment doesn't want and doesn't have the consent of the governed? What if the whole purpose of the Democratic and Republican parties was not to expand voters' choices, but to limit them? What if both parties just want power and are willing to have young people fight meaningless wars in order to enhance that power? What if both parties continue to fight the war on drugs just to give bureaucrats and cops bigger budgets and more jobs? Again, all from Judge Napolitano. What if both parties supported welfare, war, debt, bailouts, and big government? What if the rhetoric that candidates displayed on the campaign trail was dumped after electoral victory? I'm sure you remember Bill Clinton declared that the era of big government was over. George W. Bush campaigned on a platform of non-intervention and small government, believe it or not, if you have a memory. Barack Obama campaigned as an anti-war, pro-civil liberties candidate. Amazing. So this destructive bipartisan consensus has suffocated American political life for many, many years. Anyone who tries to ask fundamental questions instead of cosmetic ones is ridiculed or ignored. In fact, as Judge Napolitano said about our founder of Campaign for Liberty, Ron Paul, what if Ron Paul is being ignored by the media not because, as it claims, he's unappealing or unelectable, but because he doesn't fit into the pre-manufactured public opinion mold used by the establishment to pigeonhole the electorate and create the so-called narrative that drives media coverage of elections? What if we can make elections matter again? What if we could do something about this? That's why the Campaign for Liberty was established, to highlight the neglected and common sense principles we champion and reinsert them into the American political conversation. The U.S. Constitution is at the heart of what the Campaign for Liberty stands for, since the very least we can demand of our elected officials is fidelity to the governing document of our country. Thomas Jefferson spoke of binding our rulers down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution, and we are proud to follow in his distinguished lineage. With our founding fathers, we also believe in a non-interventionist foreign policy. Inspired by the old Robert Taft wing of the Republican Party, we are convinced that the American people cannot remain free and prosperous with over 700 military bases around the world, troops in 130 countries, and a steady diet of war propaganda. Our military overstretch is undermining our national defense and bankrupting our country. And as most of us know here tonight, most wars were never fought for the reasons that Americans were led to believe at the time. We believe that the free market, reviled by people who do not understand it, is the most just and humane economic system and the greatest engine of prosperity the world has ever known.
Amen.
Amen. We believe that the ability of the Federal Reserve, the central bank, to create money out of thin air transfers wealth from the most vulnerable to those with political pull, since it's the latter who receive the new money before the price increases it brings in its wake have yet occurred. So for economic and moral reasons, therefore, we join with the great 20th century economists in opposing the Federal Reserve System, which has reduced the value of the dollar by 95% since it began in 1913. You all might recognize this. You don't see too many of them anymore. It's just a quarter, but it's a 1963 quarter. Okay? And if you remember back then, I kind of, sort of, maybe almost do. Gasoline in the 60s was a quarter, right? Or less, right? It was less. Okay. So in the 60s, this quarter that everyone had in their pocket could buy a gallon of gas. Today, at today's current price of silver and the current amount of silver in this quarter, it's worth $4.43, which would certainly buy a gallon of gas. So it's not that gas has gone up in price, it's that our money has become worth less and less and less and less. It's a travesty, and it's organized, legalized theft. So we also oppose the dehumanizing assumption that all issues that divide us must be settled at the federal level and forced upon every American community, whether by activist judges, a power-hungry executive, or a meddling Congress. We believe in the humane alternative of local self-government as called for in our Constitution. So we believe that freedom is an indivisible whole, and that it includes not only economic liberty, but civil liberties and privacy rights as well, all of which are historic rights that our civilization has cherished from time immemorial. Our stances on other issues can be deduced from these general principles, the principles that the founders taught us. Basically, a respect for the Constitution, the rule of law, individual liberty, sound money, and a non-interventionist foreign policy, and that's what constitutes the principles of the Campaign for Liberty. So we're glad you're here tonight. We hope that constitutes a pretty summation of your principles as well. And we're going to get to our very first speaker. And it's a gentleman I have not yet met, but I assume he's here. Okay, good deal. Jimmy Mathis is a Baltimore native. So we're proud to have him here with us. He's got several distinctions. He's run for Congress before. He was, at age 16, the youngest pilot to fly solo across the United States. I thought I had an exciting life, but evidently not at all. He's done a lot of amazing things. He's worked at Fox 45 Television, Baltimore, WBAL-TV, back at Fox 5 in Washington, D.C., covered the White House and the Congress. He founded Mathis Productions. He does a lot of programming from reality, comedy, human interest, and he's also on WBAL radio on Saturday mornings. So to talk to us about how rotten Common Core is, Jimmy Mathis.
I knew once I walked in I was going to fit in pretty well here. You got to love immediately serve beer when you walk in. That's good stuff. You know, I got to tell you, first of all, it's an absolute honor. You guys, thank you so much for inviting me. And one of the privileges that I have when I do the radio show is not me getting my point out, but it's listening to the concerns of Americans. And one thing you hear a lot is, have we hit that point of no return? Has the country hit the point of no return? And it can't be fixed in one election. It can't be fixed with people speaking about it. It starts right here. It really does. It's getting the message out in small meetings, to your neighbors, to your family, to your friends, and speaking of what this country was built on. And it's always angered me when you hear people say, how could the framers of the Constitution, going back 250 plus years, how could they foreseen what we're dealing with today? And we hear that all the time, right? It has nothing to do with technology. It's about values and what we stand for. And what's sad, and I'm going to talk about Common Core here in a second. First of all, Vicki reached out to me. I've been yelling about Common Core on WBAL radio for a couple months now. And Vicki reached out to me about 2 months ago and asked if I wanted to come and talk about Common Core. I am no expert on Common Core. Who even knows what Common Core is? How many people have heard about Common Core? Cindy Sherrickson, you're an expert on Common Core. She has forgot more about Common Core than I'll know. But the one thing I realized very quickly is not only do I not know a whole lot about Common Core, this is my living. I spend every day trying to learn about this stuff and making sure that I'm up to date on what's going on. I've got 3 daughters, one of which just entered into the 1st grade. Not only do I not know what it is, other parents don't know what it is. The elected leadership that's passing the legislation doesn't know what it is. For the most part, it hasn't gone through the legislative process. And for everything that you guys are just talking about, it's a complete violation of the 4th and 10th Amendment. And that's where the conversation on it needs to start. So what I want to do, the way I view Common Core personally is it's really broken into 2 categories. You have the longitudinal data system, which you got to remember, this is going back to 2009. Well, Cindy has explained, it goes way back further than that, but I'm going to start my conversation back in 2009, which is the massive data mining program part of this. And that's what I want to focus the majority of my time on today, because that's what really got me excited about it. And the second part is the curriculum. And I'm going to dismiss the curriculum right now, because frankly, I don't care. I don't believe that we should have federalized state-run education. And if I focus on the curriculum, basically what I'm admitting is if they could get that part right, it would make everything okay. And I dismiss that. So I'm going to give just kind of a brief overview on the way Common Core came to be, and I want to leave a little additional time on the back end for questions, because part of what I do think I bring to the table here is maybe not being an expert on Common Core per se, but as I've been pushing this on the air, I've had the privilege of talking to politicians on the air, off the air, and kind of get a little bit inside baseball of what's going on with our elected leadership, especially here in Harford County. One of the first times I met Cindy, actually, when I was talking about this, and she contacted me and just started blowing up my email with everything that Common Core is and really giving me a base of learning something about it. And I had the privilege of attending a legislative roundtable session, which Harford County Executive David Craig was at. A lot of politicians were actually at it. And it was scary because it was almost like the discussion was as if this was going to be proposed legislation. Like they were learning about, and this isn't a cheap shot at the politicians, because I believe they were there at a real concern. They were trying to get information. This has been going on for 3 years now. This is going to be implemented in a couple months. And it was like they were learning about it for the first time. And this comes back to, I got two things I yell about an awful lot on the air. The first thing is, this is going back before the NSA stories and the IRS and what have you, but the abuse of the 4th Amendment when unreasonable search and seizure. And when I did my very first test show at WBAL, spent the entire show on, at the time, was red light cameras. Way before that progressed to speed cameras and now license plate recognition systems. And we have seen what a draconian government can do to us when there is no check on that power. And now we learn, which is still getting very little talk about the longitudinal data system. So this goes back to 2009. States across the country are hurting for cash. And Obama passes, or gets through the first stimulus plan, right? For shovel-ready roads and bridges and what have you. Same conversation we're having right now. And out of that $1 trillion, there was $5 billion that was allocated for Race to the Top. Okay, and this is rigor and rigor, focus, coherence. Right. So all states needed to do in order to get this $5 billion was agree to two things. First of all, that they would adopt a national set of standards. It wouldn't be set by the federal government, but all the states had to be on the same page. And the second thing would be this longitudinal data system. And the information that would be stored would include things like financial records. Now, we're going back to 2009 now, so nobody knows about the NSA stories, which, by the way, also started back in 2009. But we're not having that conversation at the time. So they want to know extracurricular activities, whether your child is on a free or reduced lunch, bus stop information, 400 data points. And that was part of what you had to do if you wanted to get this $5 billion. $5 billion is for the entire country, by the way. This wasn't per state. And it's also a one-time payment. So Maryland, obviously, because we're number one in education 5 years in a row, we're the best there is in the entire country. So we were the first ones to give up our sovereignty on this, to jump on race to the top. And as so, we promised to gather information on our children, and we promised to adopt this set of standards, which eventually went on to become Common Core. I've had the privilege of talking to a lot of teachers, principals, administrators, and the one thing that you can say without question is this is failing miserably. Considering it's only been out of the gate here officially for a couple months. It's failing. And getting back to the rhetoric on this, and again, I had the privilege of flying across the country when I was 16. I've heard this line now from principals and teachers. Evidently, this is a national line that's being used as they're trying to figure out how to put Common Core into place. The line is, it's like we're building an airplane while we're learning how to fly it. Now, let me tell you, as a pilot, I got a lot of respect for test pilots. But you know how to fly the plane before you hop in the prototype. You're not doing both simultaneously. Now, what they're saying here in the state of Maryland is, yeah, well, that's what was in the race to the top applications, but it did have to go through the legislative process. And that was Senate Bill 275, which was the original framework on the longitudinal data system. It was co-sponsored by Paul Pinsky, who I had the pleasure of having on the air to try to justify this, which he did. Because what the politicians are saying that know what this bill is, and we'll get to that in 1 second, if we're going to put all this money up, if we're going to invest this money, we want data that we can look back on and make sure that we're getting a return on our investment. Because it all comes back to money. What's scary is the politicians, I'm not going to name any names, but I've talked to off the air where I've been trying to get their take on Senate Bill 275, which then went on to become Senate Bill 945, which is just expanding who has access to this information, which, by the way, is pretty much everybody. Union members, teachers, politicians, everybody I talk to disputes that, but the people that have access to these 400 plus data points of our children is pretty much everybody. And that is in the 650 pages of the Race to the Top application. I cannot tell you how many politicians that I have talked to off the air asking why they voted for this that have told me they don't know what it is. Now, we laugh at that, but remember, we're talking about state politics, not federal. So there is a big difference when I look at this when you take the Affordable Health Care Act at 2,700 pages, comprehensive immigration reform is up to 1,600 pages. I'm not justifying it, but Senate Bill 275 was like 15 pages. Transforming the way education is run, not just in the country, but in the state of Maryland, which is number one in education 5 years in a row. Now, we all know the rhetoric on that, which is it's input-based, not outcome-based. It doesn't matter how the kids are performing, it's how much money do we pump into it. And the money's a really important part of all of this. Because right now in Harford County, I could be wrong, but I believe we just laid off 80 teachers or so. Am I roughly right on that? So we're talking about millions of dollars in infrastructure on technology that the federal government is no longer going to help us out with after the next year. This goes back to the 10th Amendment. But we had to take the money because Maryland has been such bad stewards of our cash. And the state doesn't have the privilege of printing money. Right? And it's what we're hearing on sweeping money in and out of the Transportation Trust Fund, the Chesapeake Bay Restoration Fund. It's a constant follow-the-pea game of making sure that come sine die, the books are balanced. So this is the problem with, everybody here, what they're so passionate about, navigating away from the Constitution. This is why these principles don't change. This has nothing to do with education, by the way. Absolutely nothing to do with education. Who in here is a fan of No Child Left Behind? Okay. Well, this is replacing No Child. This is No Child Left Behind on steroids. It's the same thing. It's regulations and it's mandates. And the point that I brought up at the roundtable session, these are all local politicians that are sitting in there. Most of us, I think, would probably agree. I mean, our biggest concern and why the Constitution is so important is having limited federal government. I think most people could probably agree that the best governing happens at the state and the local level. So as a politician, why would you want to give up that authority? Why would you want to relinquish that to the federal government? Now, let's say that's not the case, because we're still building the curriculum at the state level, at the county level. But from what I'm reading, in order to get these tests kicked down the road, it's got to be signed off on by Secretary Duncan. Now, they'll say, look at Senate Bill 275. In that piece of legislation, this information, first of all, is aggregated. It's not, it's not Joe Smith. We're just looking for general information, and we're very explicit on who has access to it. Okay, well, then you lie to the federal government. Because in your race to the top applications, you're saying X, Y, Z. And like all legislation, you get out what's palatable to the American people. And then you build it out later on down the road. And, part of the problem right now is as you look at No Child Left Behind, you look at an abusive Department of Justice with the Associated Press, which obviously is very concerning to someone like me. When you look at the massive data mining that we're seeing, I allocate so much of my time on the show, automated license plate recognition systems. My mom's sitting back there. By the way, wish her a happy birthday. I got to embarrass her real quick. Had her watch Minority Report the other day. Anybody see Minority Report? I'm that big sci-fi guy. That's right. I mean, think about when that movie was made, the technology that existed at the time. And that is the society that we're living in right now. And, we can use rhetoric like focus and rigor, and everybody wants the best for their children. And as a father of 3, nobody could agree with that anymore. But I'm not sure that education and Common Core are the real problems here. I think the real problem, we would all be on the same page on this, is leaving a country where our most basic civil liberties have been stripped away from us. That is completely bankrupt. You talk about the gold standard, you talk about the value in the dollar. People roll their eyes as we approach $20 trillion, as we give up state sovereignty in the name of what? Money. It's $5 billion. Look, I'll be the last person that'll say, a couple $100 million here, $1 billion here, it's not that much money. That's always offended me. But let me tell you something. For $5 billion to overtake, for all intents and purposes, the entire educational system in the state of America, that's a steal. That's a steal. And right now, what are we talking about? We're talking about another stimulus plan. Now, is there a role for the government to do great things? Like, anybody watch MSNBC, the little lean forward spots? I remember one of my favorite was Rachel Maddow. She was wearing a little hard hat standing near the Hoover Dam. Couldn't have built the Hoover Dam today. There's no way. There's no way you could build the Hoover Dam today. Can you imagine the regulation, the red tape to try to get the Hoover Dam built? They built the Hoover Dam coming out of the Great Depression. Is there a role for the federal government to do great things that states at the local level can't do? Yeah, do you think Eisenhower could build the interstate highway system today? No. So, you need to look into the rhetoric. And by the way, this isn't about Barack Obama. People got to get off that also. It's a much bigger picture. Okay? I mean, we've, right now he's kind of the whipping boy and everything, and that's fine. But this goes back to why these groups are so important. Because I was saying this the other day, this isn't about one election. You're not going to, I don't care who it is. Even Ron Paul was being great. Look, I'm one of Ron Paul's biggest supporters. I wish that would have worked out. It's not about one guy. It's about what the will of America is. And in order for that to happen, that's meetings like this, and that's individually sitting down at the bars, at the kitchen tables, talking to our friends, talking to our families. And like all legislation in this country, whether at the federal level or the state level, once people become indoctrinated into having something, they don't want to give it up. So right now, what happens with Common Core? A report came out earlier this week that only 50% of all parents, now school's in session right now, and this is dating back to 2009. Only 50%, and I'm guilty of this too, only 50% of the parents out there had even heard of it. So now, like the Affordable Health Care Act, like what will be comprehensive immigration reform if that gets through, what Common Core now is legislation that is so complicated that the people that passed it can't figure out how to regulate it, can't implement it. It's just massive money behind it, massive poor money. It has nothing to do with what is on the top of the piece of paper, just education. So where does this go moving forward? And we're hitting a point of no return on this kind of stuff, and that's why it's really important that we look at states like New York. We look at how this is failing out of the gate, and we make our voices heard at local town hall meetings, with the governor, listen, this didn't even go through the legislative process originally. This was all just a grant application, 650 pages. That's why I'm not going to stand up here and pretend to be an expert on Common Core. And that was just the application for the Race to the Top funds. That wasn't even how we're actually going to do this. And what did we give up for sending, the total sum was $5 billion. I don't know what Maryland's individual take on it. I do know one thing. It's only good till 2014.
It's only $250 million.
$250 million.
Yeah.
To give up state sovereignty when it comes to education in the state of Maryland. So I wanted to open it up for questions because, the privilege that I had is, having really hammered this home for the last 2 months or so, is, the privilege of talking to, a bevy of politicians on this. Harford County Executive David Craig right here has been great. He's been on the show. He's been outspoken about this. It's important that it's important that we give politicians their stance on this on the record right now. And Dr. Lowerly, she's she's dismissing this. She didn't sign the page. I mean, Nancy Grasmick did. I understand that. She's walking in mid-race, but she's on top of the horse now. And what's funny is I talked to state senators and delegates about this that had no idea what was in the bill that they signed. As they read it, after it's school starts, Monday, they read it. They defended it because a lot of this data was being gathered all along. Well, that doesn't make it right. It doesn't mean it's okay. It doesn't mean that any of the Fourth Amendment rights that we have given up, whether we're talking about speed cameras, license plate cameras, red light cameras. I mean, take a ride down Charles Street. It is one of the most depressing things in the world. When I leave TV Hill, you look at these contraptions that are hanging over. It's almost to the point where you can't believe that this is actually happening. And where does this go 15, 20 years from now? I've been holding off doing this segment, and I would imagine most people here probably, normally when I say this, people roll their eyes and they think I'm nuts. I think it's a matter of time before we go to a cashless society. Yeah. And as far as the valuing on the debt, the way this conversation started, we're already doing that via inflation. Yes, ma'am.
What is exactly Common Core?
It's a progression of what we did for Race to the Top. So what Common Core is, it's a set of standards across the country. Okay, it wasn't given to us by the federal government. What the federal government said was there's benchmarks that K through 12 each state needs to hit. How you get there, you can set the curriculum yourself. That's not going to be dictated by the federal government. But every state that's going to accept these funds needs to hit these benchmarks K through 12. And as part of that, what we want to do is we want to keep information on these children, not just when they get to college. This is going into their early work years now, so we can look back and see what worked out, what didn't, where we made mistakes. We want to see, is this tied into income, race? Was the kid, tardy? What extracurricular activities did they do? And what the politicians are saying is that, this would all be aggregated information. So we're not looking at Jane Doe specifically, but people that fall within this category, large data mining, overall, what's working and what isn't. My response to that is, that makes sense. Anybody that's in business, information is key, right? You want to see trends and what works, what doesn't, did your investment pay off, what can we do better? Next time on the surface, that all makes sense. Right now, in the world that we're living in, with all due respect, when it comes to personal information, your word doesn't carry a whole lot of weight. And, again, it comes down to what is education? What is the responsibility of the school? What is the responsibility of the parent? People say that they believe it's very extreme for the concern to be that there is no responsibility for the parents when it comes to education of their children. And I'm just telling you right now, firsthand, as someone who, my daughters are second day in school right now in the first grade. The information that they're asking for is very draconian. Now, I'm not questioning the intentions. I'll give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Honestly, everybody loves to beat up on politicians, especially at the local level. I believe you get into that because you want to do the right thing. I do. And I believe that when you get into national politics, look, I ran against Dutch. I didn't win, obviously, but I ran against it. And not because I wanted to make $200,000 a year and have the big pension. That all would have been very nice. But I did. I wanted to make a change. And I think that you have people that get involved in the system, and in order to make that change, first of all, you got to get elected. And God forbid you do get elected, now you got to sit on the committees and have some power. And as you go through the process, you sell a little bit of your soul to get there. Teachers, that's a calling. And so, I don't know where the blame necessarily falls, to be honest with you. But you just look overall, societally, where we're going. And that's why I dismiss education having anything to do with this, because I don't see this being about education.
It's about control.
It's about control, and this is all about information. Yes. Go ahead, Vicki, sorry.
When people ask me what Common Core is, I tell them that Common Core is to education, what Obamacare is to healthcare. It's nationalized education. But what I wanted to say in terms of information gathering, you said that is happening now.
Yes.
That is happening now. My son came home, having taken a survey at school that asked him, he's in high school, asked him whether or not there were guns in the family.
Yes.
If he was suicidal, if he had mental health issues, if he was afraid of his parents, if he had strong social relationships at home, was he sexually active, how many genders was he sexually active with, and that's the kind of stuff you're asking your kids right now.
You really got to pay attention to what paperwork and what questions are being asked to your child. And it's what we're seeing right now is sort of, there's terms I use in the radio that I use way too many, and one of them is spokes that come out of the wheel. What's another one? Peeling the onion back? Yeah. But this is really spokes coming out of the wheel. And yeah, look, individually, all this information, not to that extent, but we've had credit scores, we have health records, we've had income tax information. Necessarily, individually, these pieces of information may not be new, but what's happening right now is just the collection of it and having it that center of the wheel right now. Yes, sir.
Last question. Somebody said there was money for Warren Buffett and
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates behind this.
Well, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation put up $100 million to try to come up with the Common Core standards. Look, yeah, the federal government can come down and say, here are the standards everybody needs to follow, and Maryland could have gone out and tried to lobby, 15, 20 states to jump on board. What's easier, put together your own curriculum or just have everybody sign one to a pre-existing one? So that's kind of where the Bill and Melinda Gates thing comes from. Look, this is a massive technology program. I'm pretty sure Microsoft is down with it. If my 5 states, every state in the union needs to do this for, again, $100 million, pretty good investment. Guys, it's an absolute pleasure being here. I really, really do. Yes, ma'am. Quick second.
I just want to know, is it in the Catholic schools and the private schools?
Not yet. Not yet. And also not at home school yet. But again, I hate everything being the camel nose under the tent. But it's a matter of time. And they've already expanded it into higher education. Yes, sir.
One quick point. I think that when you look at the data mining operations that are going on with Common Core, and you look at the U.S. Census, which was also a large data mining operation, and how those can be combined with election campaigns to rig elections in a particular manner.
Yeah.
With those, the combination of all these different pieces of data that they have gathered on people throughout the years is going to give them the ability to win elections artificially, not based upon what people believe, but based upon how they can distort those elections through those data mining operations, and that is also a great thing.
It's a great point. Constitution's what, 5,000 plus words? You can read it in 15 minutes. It's not a complicated document. Okay, and there's a reason why the Founding Fathers put in the Fourth Amendment. And you know, we talk about the Second Amendment all the time. I mean, that's kind of the sexy one in the news right now. The Fourth and the 10th are under more of an assault right now than anything else in the Constitution. Yes, sir?
Yeah.
Best question.
Last question.
Yes.
Absolutely. Go ahead. All right.
I could be here all night, especially with beer, with the right tablet. So. Go ahead,
Not
sir.
really a question, but to his point about the data mining too, the long pole intent with all the data that's being collected, that eventually you're going to get down to they're going to decide the outcome of your children's future, whether or not you're going to be industrial, whether or not you're going to go on to higher education, based off of how this curriculum
Thank you, sir.
data is going to link together.
I totally.
It's state control,
Yeah.
trying to decide what the future is for your kids.
Thank you, sir. Real quick, that is such an important part, okay? And there, you know, right now the rhetoric behind this is critical thinking. To the point that this gentleman just made, that answers the question on why you have 70 of America's top CEOs writing a letter to the president saying we support this. Because let me tell you something, big business and big government is the perfect marriage. And business loves this because of what he just said. They want to know what cog of the wheel your child's going to be able to fill. That's really important. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. You guys, thank you so much.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. We are blessed with phenomenal speakers. We're so happy you could be here with us tonight, Jimmy. And are you going to hang around for the rest of the meeting? Okay, yeah. So if you've got questions for Jimmy, we'd love for you to ask him at the end of the meeting. That'd be great. Our update on the rate tax is next, and that's Vicki Seitzinger. Let's give her a hand.
Okay, for folks who might be new here tonight, just a quick update. The rain tax came from House Bill 987. It was passed down in Annapolis in 2012, and essentially that's where the rain tax comes from. It mandated that 10 counties in Baltimore City come up with funds to pay for stormwater remediation and Chesapeake Bay restoration. Harford County Council decided that they were going to task a task force with coming up with how to come up with the money that's required. So having said that, I'm here to give you an update on what the task force is doing. The task force is made up of one person per each county council member being assigned, and then there are two people the county executive assigned. Both of them are from the Department of Public Works, Tim Whitty and Christina Buckley, I believe is the other person's name. This task force is tasked with finding out how to get money out of your pocket and into this fund. They're not looking at whether it's the right thing to do or are there alternatives to this. Should we be looking at the Clean Chesapeake Coalition, which I hope everybody here remembers because we've talked about it plenty. They are only looking at how to get money out of your pocket into the appropriate pool. Just to let you know, I was at the farm fair, Harford County Farm Fair. I stopped off at the county table. There was something there from the Department of Public Works. I don't know if you can see what it says, but what does it say? Clean water, a bargain at any price. Any price. No price is is too high to pay, according to some folks. So I want clean water, I'm willing to pay for it, but I'm not willing to pay any price. That is potentially the mindset of the folks that are working on this. Now, having said that, I want to say I have tremendous respect for the folks on the task force. They're pressed into uncomfortable service. Mr. Whitty is, an experienced civil engineer. He has a hard job to do, and I respect him for the work he does. But having said that, this task force is tasked, again, with what? Taking money out of your pocket and putting it into another pool of money that's to be spent however they decide. And I think we need to be paying attention to what they're doing. And here's the reason why. For those of you who were here last week, do you recall that the Department of Public Works had initially made an estimate that it would be $30,000. It would cost $30,000 for Harford County to pay for remediation of 1 acre of impervious surface. Essentially, that's what we're being taxed on, our impervious surface. Well, the King and Hagen report came out, and I hope this is ringing bells to the folks of you who were here last week. The King and Hagen report came out. Essentially, that was a report that was commissioned by the Maryland Department of the Environment and done by the environmentalists down at the University of Maryland. And that study said that, oh no, it's going to cost $60,000. Okay, that's double. But in that report, King and Hagen also said, but counties, if you have better numbers, you should go with that because there are so many variables we can't account for. And by the way, we interviewed all the major stakeholders, but guess what, folks? They didn't interview one person in Harford County. Not one person. And yet, Harford County is going with the $60,000 number, not the $30,000. So essentially, they're doubling how much it is going to cost us, which means they're doubling what? How much money they take out of your wallet and put into somebody else's. Now, maybe it really will cost $60,000. Maybe it really will. But I think that the committee, the task force, needs to make sure that it's going to cost $60,000, not $30,000. And the people who are saying it's going to cost $60,000 need to justify that number. They can't just say, no, it's $60,000. Because at the last meeting I went to, which was a couple weeks ago, that question was asked, is that $60,000 a hard number? And the answer was yes. The answer was yes. Next thing, the Department of Public Works, I can't remember, I wish I had the number off the top of my head, how many millions of dollars they're going to collect every year over the next 5 years, but it's like 15, 17 million. Don't hold me to a number, but it's a lot of money, okay? And the folks at the Department of Public Works said even if we collect this number, this amount of money, we can't spend it. We don't have the facilities, the resources, the manpower, the tools, the time to even create the number of projects that it would take to spend that kind of money. So if they can't spend that money in a year, they gosh darn well better not collect it in a year. And these are the kinds of things that we need to be, we can no longer sit on the sidelines while other people decide our fates. We need to be at these meetings, we need to listen to what they say, we need to get on the internet when we don't understand what they're talking about and educate ourselves. There's another meeting tomorrow night, 6 o'clock at, where is it, Chad? It's not at the Abingdon Library. It's at the Black Box.
If it is, then it's probably on the second floor.
It's at the second floor at the Black Box. But you know what? You can go to the county website and you'll see where it is. Just go to the Department of Public Works and it'll be there. I'd love to see some of you folks there. I'll be there. Mr. Schroed's legislative aide has been there at everyone taking notes, so he's keeping on top of it. But we can no longer count on folks to do what is in our best interest because they don't know what's in our best interest. We know what is in our best interest. So anyway, that's the update. Okay, I'm sorry. The black box, that's what we call that big black building, 220 South Street, the one that fell over because it was so well, or was going to fall over because it was so well constructed. It's one of the county buildings. It's 220 South Main Street. Are you from Harford County? Or South Bond Street? Yeah, it's
the county building right there across from like Looney's or?
No, it's on the, it's 220 South Bond Street. Thank you for the correction. correction over there. But go on the county website and just make sure. I would hate for like 20 people to show up at the wrong place and then it's my fault.
Find it out now.
Okay, Chad's taking care of that. All right, any other questions? All right, there's a meeting tomorrow night. I'll update you next month.
Vicki, it is 220. It says 220 South Main Street.
South Main.
Not the black box.
Okay, it's not the black box, it's 220 South Main Street.
Oh, no, I can thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Speaking of people not doing what's in our best interest, I got a little thing I'm going to kind of let you guys know about. First of all, we're going to play a little clip from the town hall that happened a couple of weeks ago. That was Andy Harris's town hall down in the town of Bel Air. Anybody make that meeting? Anybody was there? Okay. All right, so we're going to play the clip here.
Well, not all members of Congress are using the full 5-week vacation to play golf or sit on the beach. A small number are holding a town hall meeting, and some of them are getting an earful from a very disgruntled electorate. Voters are angry about everything from Obamacare to Benghazi to the NSA. Griff Jenkins reports from a town hall meeting in Maryland.
If it's August, it's town hall season, and some brave members of Congress actually held them in 2013.
When is this government going to come clean with the American people and tell us what this secret law says, how it's being secretly interpreted, how it's being secretly implemented, and what it means to every person in this room?
I am very, very worried about what the NSA is doing. We're going to find out that the NSA was not complying with the law. I don't know about you, but I'm offended by the government knowing the record of every person, of having access to every person I...
Okay, he's offended by everybody, the government knowing every phone call that he makes, and he says that we're going to find out that the NSA has broken the law. Well, what has Congressman Harris done since then? Subsequent to this tape, it's also been come out through a Freedom of Information Act by the Electronic Frontier Foundation that the FISA court has said that the NSA has violated the Fourth Amendment and acted in unconstitutional ways multiple times. And it was reported in the Washington Post that last year that the NSA had listened and violated the Constitution 2,700 times. Roll the tape.
It's kind of a big step. And now we have all these embassies closed. Yeah. And they still don't know what the heck happened there.
You have not seen the end of Benghazi. You have definitely not seen the end of the IRS investigation. There is no question you've not seen the end of that.
Innocent people, if you will, yes, are getting slammed by the partisan politics.
Let me ask you a question. People are going to be losing their mortgage, they're going to be losing their house. They can't pay their bills because of what you guys did.
I think we heard some discontent with what's going on with not taking care of the problems in this country. And I think you heard a lot of criticism of the president here tonight. You heard some criticism of Congress. And you heard about the issues that people are worried about. People are frustrated. They're seeing an economy that's not recovering. They're seeing a president that is sitting on the sidelines, literally playing golf, literally fiddling while Rome's burning.
We did not feel that John Boehner effectively represented us. I mean, as the voice of the House of Representatives, I think John Boehner could do a much better job.
I want Boehner up there defying this guy and saying, we're going to impeachment with you if you do not start obeying the laws.
The Republicans
I get it, right.
But listen, we're dying out here because you guys are being nice guys. This is not a Boy Scout meeting.
It's not, and you're acting like Boy Scouts. You gotta fight. This
Because we're losing the country. I want to see more defiance. We've seen this dozens of times where Boehner will not fight, where McConnell will not fight, where Paul Ryan and the debate with Joe Biden sat there and took it from him. And we're, the American people, putting our hopes on these people to defend us, and we get nothing.
Okay. A couple of things are instructive here. First of all, the black gentleman that you saw speaking on that tape right there, his name is Gene Craig. He's a member of the Baltimore County Republican Central Committee. He, along with a lot of other people, are not happy with John Boehner and his continual acquiescence and playing like a lapdog chihuahua.
He likes a set of brass ones.
To Barack Obama. Yet Congressman Harris continually supports Mr. Boehner.
They're all blackmailed.
Secondly, you heard this gentleman talk about we want some fight. These people will not fight. They refuse to fight. Now, pinning your hopes and dreams on these people is false hope, quite frankly. That is the direct path to power. It doesn't work. People get down there, they get cushy, they get jobs, they get comfortable, they get on committees, they get seniority, they get perks, and then they stop remembering where they came from and who they're representing. All right? This is clear what's happened with Mr. Harris. Now, fight. They won't do it. They refuse to do it. And quite frankly, Congressman Harris's votes on our civil liberties are atrocious. He's voted for the Patriot Act. He's voted for warrantless wiretaps. He's voted for the FISA amendments, which reauthorized the FISA court for 5 years, the secret court with the secret rulings, with the secret interpretations. He voted for CISPA, which gives the government control of the internet. It's like the TSA for the internet. He voted for the Drone Act, H.R. 658. It's going to put 30,000 drones in the air. The FBI has already said that they've used drones in surveillance. He voted against the Smith Amendment to the NDAA when it came up, which was going to prevent indefinite detention and imprisonment by the military of U.S. citizens on U.S. soil. He voted against that. My friends, it doesn't get any better. Now, he's not committed to defunding Obamacare. He has a 62% rating, by the way, from FreedomWorks, which is not good. The Republican leadership now is either afraid or unwilling to defund Obamacare. The people want representatives who will fight, as you saw on that tape. Now, Minority Leader McConnell, who was mentioned by the gentleman in the tape, is personally leading an effort to keep senators away from the Lee letter. The Lee letter is a letter that was signed by senators to defund Obamacare. There's also a Meadows letter from Mark Meadows from the 11th Congressional District of North Carolina, where 80 congressmen in the House of Representatives have signed pledging to not vote for any continuing resolution that funds Obamacare. McConnell's been successful in getting 5 senators to take their name off of this list, and they're the usual rhinos: Kelly Ayotte, John Boozman, John Cornyn, Mark Kirk, Roger Wicker, and Lindsey Graham and John McCain are actually opposed to defunding Obamacare. Congressman Meadows' letter is getting no traction in the House of Representatives. Only 80 of these congressmen, 80 of the 218 Republicans in the House, have signed it. That's pathetic. Now, it appears that the GOP leadership is afraid that if they vote to defund Obamacare, but fund other parts of the government, they can't control the narrative for defunding a law that has 55 to 60% unfavorability rating. Now, it has a 39% very unfavorable rating according to the most recent Rasmussen poll among likely voters. Now, if you can't control the debate in an environment like that, you should resign. You should go home because you're incompetent and you don't know what you're doing. The House GOP leadership seems to be afraid that Obama will blame them for a government shutdown and they will lose their majority in the House. Now, my question is this: what good does it do to have a majority if you're not going to do it to advance your principles, especially the principles upon which you campaigned and by which you gained the majority? The GOP is confronted with a Hobson's choice. If they don't vote to defund Obamacare, their base may stay home in 2014, just like it stayed home in 2012. And Obama's going to demonize them anyway. So this is really kind of the crux for the Republican Party right here, in my opinion. As a registered Republican, I will say that. Now, a person who's grounded in their principles would vote their principles and let the chips fall where they may. You got 55% of the country, likely voters, on your side. I don't know how you can really lose with that. But Andy Harris has not signed this Meadows letter to defund Obamacare, the pledge to defund Obamacare. Now, when his office in Washington was called, they said that they didn't know whether he was going to sign the letter or not. Now, that means to me, if they don't know, and this is one of the biggest items in the news like for the past month, that means that the answer is no. Because there's only two options for such a reply. One is they're lying, and the second is that they're incompetent, and neither are acceptable. So listen to this. This is an interesting little clip that I found today when I was just kind of poking around.
Mr. Speaker, the bad news on Obamacare just keeps rolling in. As if it's not bad enough that the IRS will be helping run Obamacare, Maryland announced last Friday that health insurance premiums will go up 25% next year under Obamacare. Whatever happened to the president's promise that premiums would go down, not up? Just another empty promise? Maryland's middle-class families, already struggling to pay their health insurance premiums, will see their policies cost over $1,000 more next year under Obamacare. Many will just drop their insurance, and that will just increase the long lines we already see in our crowded emergency rooms. Mr. Speaker, Obamacare is a disaster. We should repeal it before it does more damage to our hard-working middle-class taxpayers and before it destroys even more jobs.
It's a disaster, so why in the world won't you defund it? Right. It's a disaster. I can't sign the letter to defund. Why? Because he's blackmailed. Why? All right. When the GOP was bragging to be restored to power in 2009, the Pledge to America said that if they got the keys back, they were going to abide by the Constitution and use the power of the purse to stop Obamacare. Well, now they have the power of the purse and they refuse to use it. Promises. Promises kept from the Pledge to America. Who's seen the Pledge to America? Go home and Google it. Promises kept from the Pledge to America? Exactly zero. That ain't priceless. What good are these guys then? Who cares if they have the majority in the House if they continually have preemptive surrender as a strategy? Preemptive surrender is no strategy. As you can see from that tape, the American people want their representatives to fight for their interests and not for their perks and their office and their power and the people that are funding their campaigns. They want people that are going to fight rather than roll over like a pet chihuahua for Barack Obama, like I said earlier. Have you noticed how the GOP leadership always finds that it's not the right time to fight? Oh, well, we're only 1/3 of 1/2 of the government. We got to have the Senate. Oh, to get the Senate. Oh, well, the president's just going to veto it. We got to have the presidency. So you get the House and the Senate and the presidency. Oh, well, you know what? The Supreme Court is just going to rule it unconstitutional. We need to get a couple more Supreme Court justices on there, and then then we can do it. This is like Lucy and the football. They continue to use us and get people to volunteer for them and write them checks and knock on doors and get elected, and then when they get down there, they do zero. Except keep themselves in power. Now, all of this is in stark contrast to candidate Harris, who in 2010, when he was running for Congress, said this, quote, "In recent years, our Constitution has been treated as irrelevant. As a member of Congress, I will consider every proposal for its constitutional legitimacy and return appropriate powers to the states and to the people. I pledge to make legislative decisions ensuring all our constitutional rights are fully protected." Hey, I worked for the guy. I dropped lit, I knocked on doors, I was camped out in front of Frank Cradaville's office a couple times a week, handing stuff to people when they were driving by in cars. What a mighty fall from the defender of the Constitution to establishment tool. It's pretty tragic, if you ask me. Unfortunately, he's no longer one of us. He abandoned the conservative base and Tea Party grassroots that carried him to victory in the fall of 2010. And like I said, I was one of those folks. Now, what am I going to do about it? Well, your mission, when you leave here, should you decide to accept it, is to call and email Congressman Harris and tell him to sign the Meadows letter to defund Obamacare and to vote no on any CR that has any funds for Obamacare. If his people tell you that he's a co-sponsor of the Graves bill to defund Obamacare, so what? Politicians co-sponsor bills all the time, doesn't mean a thing. And then they ultimately vote against bills at which they co-sponsored. Right. Ask Ron Paul about the 40 Democrats who co-sponsored the Audit the Fed bill that ultimately voted against the Audit the Fed bill. Bill sponsorship and co-sponsorship mean very little. They give politicians political cover. The only thing that counts are recorded votes. This vote on defunding Obamacare is going to be very important for the future of the GOP that claims to be the conservative party. If they do not walk the walk and vote and not vote to defund Obamacare, then they should catch the next train to Whigville.
Thanks a lot, Scott. If it weren't for your kind of reporting and to know what's going on, people would believe the rhetoric that he's our guy. He's the guy we work for. He's doing his job. Real quickly, because we're a little bit behind time. Thank you, Rick, for priming the pump. But this is our drawing for door prizes. For those of you who are new tonight or brought someone new, you can win a Campaign for Liberty T-shirt. Yes, there is something on it. You can have any color you want as long as it's blue. And the first winner, such an old joke, 494. 494 is the last three numbers. 494. Come on down, run down like you're excited. Oh, 494. And the second winner is 496. 496. I think you can choose, these are extra larges, but you can choose a size. You can trade it for what's behind door number 2. I like your shirt, by the way. All right. The reason we use these is because this facility costs us $250 a night when we have it here. We have lots of other expenses, robocalls and stuff like that. The one recent robocall wasn't from Campaign for Liberty, although we got credit for it. But we have lots of expenses and we take no salaries. There's nobody paid to do anything that we do here in Harford County. So we'd love to have you contribute and help us be able to do these things. We'll pass that around. And it's open mic time. And if we can have Diane Hussey, and then Jackie Aborn.
Forgot me.
I forgot you?
Yeah, you forgot me.
No, you're not on open mic.
You're not on open mic. You're later.
Mike before?
Yeah.
You've got your own.
We would never forget you. You're right in the front row.
Okay.
We can't miss you. Diane, come on up. Jackie Aborn, come up. Al Smith, you're in the hole. And I will start this tomorrow. If all our open mic people can try to keep it to 2 minutes just because we're a little over time, that's awesome. If you can't, it's no problem. We have a taser. No, I'm just kidding.
Hi, I'm Diane Hussey, and I represent the Maryland Pro-Life Alliance. And I wanted to let you know a little bit about who we are. We're a statewide grassroots organization committed to protecting the sanctity of life in Maryland through political activity and issue advocacy. We have 2 strategic goals that we're trying to accomplish. Passage of the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. It is universally accepted medical evidence proves that at 20 weeks fetal age, that's in the 6th month, unborn babies are capable of feeling pain. This would ban abortions in Maryland at 20 weeks. The second strategic goal we have is passage of a bill to end all taxpayer funding for abortion in Maryland. This bill would immediately cease all funding of abortion but are not limited to annual budget allocations to Planned Parenthood. It's going to be a hard fight because Maryland is not a pro-life state. According to the 2013 Life List put out by Americans United for Life, Maryland ranks 43 out of the 50 states as one of the least protective states for unborn babies. We have enemies. The pro-abortion, anti-life people, including some politicians, the abortion industry, and others. But we have an opportunity because recent polls indicate that a higher percentage of Americans support a ban on abortions at 20 weeks than those who oppose it, by a margin of 56 to 27%. We are asking pro-life supporters in Maryland to join us by signing our petitions, and I have them for both the Pain Capable Unborn Child Protection Act and for ending taxpayer funding for abortion in Maryland. And we also need financial support as well to help with donations, because it costs money to do what we're going to do and going after the legislature and holding them accountable. Because right now we're in the process of identifying, communicating with, and mobilizing pro-life volunteers and voters in Maryland to fight for the lives of these unborn children. When we connect the legislative session to the election cycle, we can hold our legislators accountable for their actions. If they do not support pro-life issues in the legislature, Maryland Pro-Life Alliance will inform their constituents before and during the next election cycle. Join us to help make Maryland a right-to-life state.
Great job. She's back there in the corner, so make sure you sign those petitions if you'd like to do so. Jackie Aborn, you are up. Al Smith, you're on deck. Dan Galuzzo, you're in the hole. Get out of that hole, Dan.
What?
There you go.
Don't give me more time. Hi, I'm Jackie Aborn, and I'm usually up here speaking about O'Malley's No Americans, but I'm going to give you a break. I'm sure you all know what the meaning of 9/11 is. And I love to see the legislators have some kind of a national victims remembrance day on that day, but I don't know if that'll ever be done. And I guess you all know what caused the 9/11 and who caused the 9/11, which of course was the Muslim Brotherhood. Well, on September 11th, at our nation's capital, there's going to be a million Muslim prayer day. They're out there celebrating and praying, and what they're praying for, God only knows, you know. So, many groups got together, and I'm hearing that there's going to be also, not only the Million Muslim Prayer Day, but it's going to be versus the Million Bikers Protest Day. And I understand that thousands are going to be there with their bikes. It's not just for the bikers, it's for all of us to stand behind them. So, I mean, I'm taking a MARC train. You can carpool, and maybe Campaign for Liberty would love to get a bus going. And just get out there and how dare them go on that date of 9/11 and have their National Prayer Day when they are the ones responsible for 9/11. So I just wanted to come up here and mention there's plenty of parking, I think, behind Union Station, but I wouldn't dare try to drive that day, either the train or carpool or buses. You know, if you can all get some buses together. But I'll be there if I have to thumb it, you know, I'm just going to be there. That's it.
Thank you. My money's on the bike. Okay. Dan, you're on deck. Sorry. Gotta keep it light. And Jen, or John Smith, is in the hole.
How you doing? Al Smith here. I only get up here because they won't let me talk at home. Real quick, what I really want to talk about is the IOTC is having a seminar the 6th of September, which is the first Friday of September. It's free if you go online and register for a tape. But yeah, it's all about interposition. And interposition is how our county sheriff and our county councils can take back the country by just not enforcing these goofy laws, just declaring their sovereignty. The other thing is, Oh, there we go. Rule of law. We talked about rule of law earlier and how our Constitution is set up for the rule of law as opposed to the rule of man. But if you look at all the laws they're passing, legal and illegal, they all leave gray areas for bureaucrats to interpret, which actually winds up being the rule of man. They make these laws, but they say, oh, well, this word doesn't really mean that. We'll tell you what it means. So basically, the bureaucrats taking control of the country. Now, the other thing is, the IOTC has got a momentum going to reinstate state militias. Unfortunately, our state's attorneys, our U.S. attorney, is not enforcing the laws because they're not going to arrest our bosses. So what we have to do is reinvigorate the state militias, because then they can go and enforce the laws and arrest the lying SOBs. Anyhow, talking about politicians earlier and how they tell you one thing and then they do another thing, that's a politician. But a statesman, he's a good man for his word. He draws the line in the sand and he won't go over it. So we need statesmen is what we need. I guess that's it. All right, thanks.
You only took 2 minutes. I'm speechless. But he did look at me when he said lying SOBs, and I really resent that. But Dan, you're up. Jen Smith, you're on deck, and Rick Grambo, you're in the hole.
Hello. You're all patriots. I love being with you. For those who don't know me, I was an NSA field operative, and retired from that. We have freedom, but freedom is given to us. It can't be taken from us. But we also have freedom not to do things, not just have freedom to do things. Like, for example, I want freedom now, and I think you do too. I want freedom not to be told what light bulbs to buy. I want freedom to speak as I wish, when I wish. I want freedom not to have my privacy violated. I want freedom not to pay for abortion. I want freedom to sing the national anthem whenever I want to recite the Pledge of Allegiance whenever I want to, and to respect our military whenever I want to. Amen. Freedom demands responsibility. I've said this before, and I'm saying it again, and I would like to give you a warning tonight, too. You have to watch what they're doing now, especially in Syria. They're talking the same talk before they went into Iraq. And what happens is this. Legally, the president cannot declare martial law unless there is a war. That's when the president can declare martial law. John Kerry sounds exactly like what they said before going into Iraq. I have a grandson that did 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan, and he's standby right now. They do not belong in Syria, so watch them. But I say to you this, we need citizen representatives elected through merit who pledge to protect and defend the Constitution, who swear not to profit by their position, who swear not to be unfaithful to their spouses, who protect the Constitution, do their work, and go home. That's what we need. God bless you all.
All right, a new speaker here tonight, Jen Smith. And then Rick Grambo, you're on deck. And we have a new young fellow that's just going to close this out real briefly.
Hi, I'm Jen Smith. I'm with Maryland Alimony Reform. A lot of people don't know about it. A lot of people don't even think it exists. It is a clear violation of the 13th Amendment. People are forced to pay their non-working or very wealthy ex-spouses for the rest of their lives until they die. It ends at their death. If they don't pay, they go to jail, debtor's prison. Trying to abolish it, trying to get rid of it. I think what most people don't know about alimony is What the states have done under the Social Security Title IV, Section D, is they have lumped alimony in with child support. So every time you don't pay your alimony and the state comes after and collects those monies from you, the state gets paid by the federal government, I think somewhere about 60 cents to 70 cents, 75 cents on the dollar. It comes out of Social Security to pay the states. That money is then, in turn, put into the judges' pensions fund, into the judges' salaries, and it is then put into pay for the people that come and arrest you and put you in jail for simply not paying an ex-spouse who has their boyfriend or girlfriend living with them that doesn't work. So you are forced to pay for 2 households. Who can do that? Can you pay for 2 households? Can you pay for 2 households? Alimony is 3 times the amount of child support. For an adult, an able-bodied adult, it's a disgrace. It's an outrage. We are going to be forced into welfare in our old age, most likely. We'll be homeless in our old age because it's impossible. Our alimony is more than our mortgage. It's disgusting. So we're trying to, abolish it, get rid of it, force people to stand up and be independent, and to be free from our ex-spouses and not have a financial noose around our neck that virtually ends at our death. It's a crime. It's in America. This is the country of independence, and we are creating, we're creating dependency and entitlements through marriage, and no state or no court should honestly tell my husband he can never retire because he has to pay his ex-spouse and her live-in retired or boyfriend, because they'll never get married. So, we're just kind of letting people know and making people aware of it and hoping we'll have some people support us to abolish this crime against a lot of men and women. People are tied to their abusers, forced to pay their abusing ex-spouses alimony just because they happen to go to work every single day. And the ex-spouses just don't want to, don't have to. So, that's about it. Thank you.
That's a new topic that we haven't had here before. That's really interesting. Rick Grambo, and then Eric.
Yeah, I'm going to be real quick. I'm here to tell you about something that is an unfunded liability in your school system that they're not talking about, okay? This is called OPEB. That's other post-employment benefits. It's separate from the pension. It is up to $167 million this year. It's grown 28% from June 2012. It's probably going to be over $200 million next year. The school system is paying for these benefits as they go. There's no money coming in. When I was president of the board, I sent a letter over to the council president and the county executive, and their answer basically, instead of fixing this problem, is it's your problem, school system, you fix it. I'm telling you what, if you live in Hartford County, it's your problem, and they're coming for your wallet. And to tell you one more thing, the Common Core is not cheap. The Common Core is not done. There's a lot of money left to spend to put this thing into place. And on the night that a motion was to be made, and it was widely known that the motion was going to be made to eliminate the Common Core and the park assessment testing from Hartford County Public Schools, the county executive sent a letter and a person to read it worrying about bus stops and transportation. Okay, so when he's out in front of the governor telling you he doesn't want to see Common Core, he's not fighting against Common Core. And what they tell you, we can't fight it. Just like the rain tax. Well, if I can get 4 more votes, we'll stand up and find out how much you can fight it. Okay, that's what we need.
Hello everyone. Who here has seen the movie Zeitgeist? You've seen Zeitgeist.
Loose Change is better though.
Loose Change? Have you seen Zeitgeist? The spirit, in German it's World Spirit. The movie Zeitgeist. You can find it on the internet for free. It's very important. Also, have you ever heard of the people say inside job? Did you ever hear about the inside job? Yeah, 9/11. Check it out. Inside job. 9/11 inside job. And oh no, not.
That's a good documentary that Showtime played.
Oh yeah. And That would be about it. Also, I'd say check out Spirit Science on YouTube. Oh, Zeitgeist? I think it's Z-I-E.
It's the German spelling.
Yeah, Zeit. So Z-I-E-T, and then Geist, which is G-I-E-S-T.
Religion for everything, so I don't get it.
Yeah. But I would definitely say check out those information. Check it out on the internet. It's for free. Hopefully, as long as they don't put that CISPA or SOPA or any of that information to, suppress ideas. But thank you. And
thanks, Eric. Let's give a hand to a young person. By the way, I am compelled to tell you, first of all, I want to apologize to Gary Johnson. We're starting you a little bit late. We're going to run you up here in 1 second, but we're $30 short just to cover the meeting tonight. So if anybody would like to contribute to that, we'll have the buckets out there as you leave. 10 of you put in $30. No, okay. That'll help us out a lot. Anyway.
$1. We just need 30 to pay for.
There already went. All right, here's some coming right now. Okay, Gary Johnson's going to talk to us about an important topic that you won't hear probably anywhere else: jury nullification.
Subject here, I think, will pretty much explain why all of the things are going wrong that you've heard discussed thus far this evening, and it will perhaps give you a glimmer of an answer as to what we can do about it. Jury nullification. This sounds like some sort of a strategy for denying justice, but it isn't. It's exactly the opposite. It is a doctrine of some age whose intent was to assure that, in fact, that justice is done, particularly when the injustice that's being done is being done by the government. Our founding fathers had ample evidence that government could indeed be unjust, whether a monarchy, an aristocracy, or a democracy, whether you're talking about an individual or a body of people. Whenever you're talking about these things, the thing you need to remember is that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And the founders knew this. When it came to politics, the key concept in the minds of the founders was that of popular sovereignty. The Constitution they would eventually write identified our sovereign as we the people. The freedom they desired was the sort that comported well with a thing called natural law. And it spoke of freedom in terms of God-given rights that left one able to choose one's own course and the means of attaining one's goals by whatever efforts one would choose. And they would do this in voluntary exchange with others who were exercising the same freedoms of choice. Our founders did not choose to be under a monarchy, nor an aristocracy, nor did they choose to be a democracy. Instead, they were concerned about democracies because they were too easily swayed by emotions and oftentimes descended into unruly mobs. They often referred to democracy as mobocracy. Instead, they chose to be a republic. This was the view of government that was championed by English philosopher John Locke. In a republic, individuals have natural rights, and the law is held to a higher authority. Here, the government is considered to be an agent of the individual. The purpose of government is to secure one individual's inalienable rights to life, liberty, and property. Thomas Jefferson explained this in the Declaration of Independence. He wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed." Remember that just powers phrase. Jefferson's thoughts were not original to him. They had similarly been expressed by others in other writings, both personal and official. But the words of the Declaration were deemed to be an expression of the American mind. This government was to have strictly limited powers, only those delegated to it by the people. Most importantly, if those powers were exceeded or abused, they were subject to revocation by the people. The ultimate right to rule was to reside with we the people. This is what popular sovereignty means. And this is where jury nullification and other forms of interposition come into play. To understand the power of jury nullification, one must first understand the importance of jury independence. To understand jury independence and its intended purpose, one must first understand law and its intended purpose. To do so, you might go where the founders went. Sir William Blackstone was the foremost authority on the common law. There were more copies of Blackstone's commentaries sold in the American colonies than in England itself. For you see, it was not English law that the American colonists were opposed to. It was the fact that they were being denied its benefits. You may say that English law has nothing to do with you, but you would be mistaken. On the day this new nation declared its independence, July the 4th, 1776, the founders adopted English law as the official law of this land. As a Marylander, you should be aware that you are entitled to, among other things, the benefits of the common law of England, as it existed on July 4th, 1776. So says our Maryland Constitution this very day. As this is one of your constitutional benefits, it seems only prudent that you have an understanding of what the law says. For you see, the right to trial by jury comes to us from that body of law. Colonial legal practice was modeled on English law, where jury trials had been in use since the 13th century. In ancient times, jurors could be subject to legal action if they brought a verdict which the court thought was contrary to law. In criminal cases, the Star Chamber could punish them severely for bringing in what they deemed to be a false verdict. Under the Star system, court sessions were held in secret, with no indictment, no right of appeal, no witnesses, no juries, and punishment was swift and severe. This court system came to an end in 1641, gratefully, and with it came many changes in the role of the jury. Many of these changes came about due to the trial of William Penn. This is the Penn for whom Pennsylvania was later named. When Penn was but 26 years old, he became a Quaker. Subsequently, he was arrested in London on the charge of disturbing the king's peace. This resulted from his preaching of nonconformist religious views at an outdoor meeting in London. This occurred at a time when the monarchy was aggressively suppressing religious dissent. Well, Penn inquired as to what law it was that he had violated, and the judge told him he had violated the common law. Well, Penn asked, could you tell me specifically which law that was? And the judge decided not to do that. He said, I'm a judge, I know the law, I have years of experience, you can trust me on that. Well, Penn responded that the judge said the only question at issue is your guilt. Penn shot back that the only question was not his guilt regarding the indictment, but whether or not the indictment was even legal. He said, for where there is no law, there is no transgression. And that law which is not in being is so far from being common that it is no law at all. William Penn's defense was that by merely speaking on a street corner, he had violated no law. The Crown had produced no substantive evidence against him, so the jury agreed with Penn. The judge was outraged and commanded the jury to retire again and to render a verdict of guilty. The jury did so retire and came back with the same verdict. The indignant judge then confined them to Newgate Prison and told them they would remain there without food or water until a proper verdict was rendered. 3 more times the jury returned, but always with the same verdict. The judge finally fined each of them and ordered them to be in prison until the fines were paid. Now, this jury had nullified a bad law by interposing themselves between the defendant and a corrupt magistrate. Despite the jurors' courageous stand, however, William Penn and his co-defendant did not escape punishment. They were sent to prison for wearing hats in the courtroom. They had actually removed their hats upon entering, but the judge ordered them to put them back on. They followed his instructions. After their release, Penn left England and came to America. Colonial America, however, was not free from judicial misconduct either. The sedition trial of John Peter Zenger established another landmark. Zenger, a publisher, was arrested for printing news that was critical of the royal governor of New York Colony and his cronies. Zenger had accused them of corruption. His accusations were proven to be true, but the court informed his jury that under the law, truth is no defense. Zinger's lawyer told the jurors the story of William Penn and argued that as judges of the merits of the law, they could not, in good conscience, convict Zinger for violating of such a bad law. The jurors agreed, and the case was acquitted in about 5 minutes. Cases such as these led John Adams to say that it is not only the juror's right, but his duty to find according to his own best interest, judgment, and conscience, even though it would be in direct opposition to the direction of the court. John Jay, our first Chief Justice, said, "The jury has the right to judge both the law as well as the fact in controversy." And Thomas Jefferson, who made comment on this subject in a letter to William Jarvis in 1820, he wrote, "You seem to consider the judges as the final arbiters on all constitutional questions, a very dangerous doctrine indeed, and one which would place us under the despotism of an oligarchy. Our judges are as honest as other men, and not more so, and their power is more dangerous, as they are in office for life and are not responsive to the elective control. The Constitution has no such single tribunal, knowing that to whatever hands it was confided, with the corruption of time and party, its members would become despots. The independent jury is crucial, for the jury has the power to hold the government in check." In the 19th century, Lysander Spooner was the foremost exponent of the right to juries to decide issues of law. Spooner was a lawyer, a constitutional scholar, an abolitionist, an entrepreneur, legal theorist, and political radical. In 1852, he wrote an essay on trial by jury, and in it, he summarizes the case for jury discretion. He writes, "The object of this trial by country or by the people, in preference to a trial by the government, is to guard against every species of oppression by the government. In order to effect this end, it is indispensable that the people or country judge and determine their own liberties against the government, instead of the government's judging of and determining its own powers over the people. Liberty is all about people governing themselves. This is what was established by our founding documents." So how did we get from there to here? I contend that it is because we no longer teach the concept of government under God. Thus, we have no understanding of what law is and where law comes from. To properly understand this, we need only read the Declaration of Independence. There, Jefferson wrote the following: "When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation." Now from this we find that what entitles us to be a free and independent nation are a set of laws that the founders called the laws of nature and of nature's God. Well, what did they mean by this? Aren't laws something that are passed in places like Washington or Annapolis? If some body of legislators in either of those two cities spills ink on paper and the executive signs their name to it, is that law? Or does law mean something else? From Blackstone, the founders learned that law, in its most general and comprehensive sense, signifies a rule of action, which is prescribed by some superior and to which inferiors are bound to obey. Now, the Declaration states that our rights come to us from our Creator. So from this, we surmise that man is a created being, inferior to and subject to the laws of his Creator. As a created being, man is consequently dependent upon his Maker for everything. Thus, it is necessary that he should conform to his Maker's will in every aspect of his life. This will of the Maker is known as the law of nature. As the Creator is a being of infinite wisdom, he has laid down eternal, immutable laws of good and evil, to which the Creator himself conforms, and which he has enabled man to discover through human reason. In brief, these are as follows: that we should live honestly, that we should hurt no one, and that we should render to everyone his due. This law of nature, being coeval or of the same age with mankind, and dictated by God himself, is superior to any other law. It is binding all over the globe, in all countries, at all times. According to Blackstone, no human laws are of any validity if contrary to this law of nature. Now, if our reason were always clear and perfect as it was in our first ancestor Adam before the fall, if we were unruffled by passions, unclouded by prejudice, unimpaired by disease or intemperance, we should need no other guide than this law of nature. However, according to Blackstone, every man now finds that his reason is corrupt, and that his understanding is full of ignorance and error. Hence, more is needed. For this reason, God interposed himself, so that we might discover and enforce his laws by direct revelation. The doctrines thus delivered became known as the revealed or divine law, and these are to be found, according to Blackstone, only in the Holy Scriptures. Thus, upon these two foundations, the laws of nature and the law of revelation, depends all human laws. To emphasize this, Blackstone says that no human laws should be suffered to contradict these. It is these two laws that entitle America to exist, or as the Declaration states, to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle us. And for over 100 years, American judges referred either to Blackstone, the Bible, or both. Now, thus far, our thoughts have been confined to man, his relationship to his God, and his relationship to his neighbor. This is what Blackstone called the state of nature, where all are equal without any superior other than God, the author of our being. But God did not design man to live in a state of nature. Man was formed for society, where people joined together to meet mutual needs regarding want and fear. Such societies take on different forms. They are communities of people called cities or states or countries, differing only in terms of size. The inhabitants have come together and bonded for their mutual benefit. Additional laws thus became necessary. These laws are of human creation and are known as municipal laws. As Blackstone stated, municipal law is defined as a rule of civil conduct prescribed by the superior power in the state, commanding what is right and prohibiting what is wrong. But remember, no human laws are to be suffered that contradict the laws of nature and of nature's God. In society, man is not just a creature of God's, he is also a citizen. Thus, he is bound to other duties than those of mere nature and religion, duties which he has engaged in by enjoying the benefits of this common union to which he belongs. But as all members who compose society are naturally equal, into whose hands are the reins of government to be entrusted? In civil society, who is to be our superior? According to Blackstone, all mankind agrees that government should be reposed in such persons in whom those qualities are most likely to be found, the perfection of which is among the attributes of him who is emphatically styled the Supreme Being. Now, this is Blackstone's way of identifying God. He is saying that the leaders we choose should reflect godly qualities. And what are those qualities? They are wisdom, goodness, and power. The wisdom to discern the real interest of the community. Goodness to endeavor always to pursue that real interest. And strength, or power, to carry this knowledge and intention into action. For this is what law is, a rule of action. The formulation of such laws is the role of civil government. Wherever the supreme authority in any state resides, it is the right of that authority to make laws. For our founders, this supreme power resided in colonial governments, which had been duly chartered by the king and were recognized by English law. Again, it wasn't the law of England that they objected to. It was the fact that a tyrant named George III was denying them the benefits of English law. So, the Founding Fathers interposed themselves between the higher magistrate, the king, and the people that he ruled over. To fully understand the power of jury nullification, one must understand that it is an act of interposition. This is what separates legal interposition from the rioting mob. The mob may be justified in its anger, but rioting is never a legal or a moral decision. Our founders chose the better way. They were the elected representatives of the people. They knew the law. They recognized when a higher authority had violated the law, and they used the law to bring an end to this abuse of the law, which they called usurpation. In the same way, the jury represents the people. If they know the law, not the tens of thousands of ordinances created in Washington and Annapolis, but the law, as it is spelled out in the Bible and the U.S. Constitution, then they too can hold the magistrate and his or her superior in check and stop their usurpation of the powers they have been given. The founders chose neither a democracy, nor an aristocracy, nor a monarchy. They instead chose a republic. Now this is a source of confusion for many, as they have more often heard that we are a democracy. Yet our Constitution states that we are a republic, and that each state is to have a republican form of government. And again, what is it that distinguishes a republic from a democracy? It is that a republic holds itself accountable to a higher authority than a democratic majority. The founders created a government that recognizes that power corrupts. Thus, they designed certain checks and balances so that such corruption could be minimized. Vertically, these are represented by the different levels of government: federal, state, county, and local. Horizontally, they are represented by the three branches of government. However, it has long been held by many founders that there is one more branch. This would be the jury. To Lysander Spooner and others, the jury was merely one of 5 tribunals created by the Constitution. He wrote the following: in order for a citizen to be deprived of his liberty, all 5 tribunals, the House of Representatives, the Senate, the executive, judiciary, and the jury, must agree. All 5 entities represent the people. Judges may be selected democratically, but it's the jurors who are the demo. Spooner saw criminal intent as the hallmark of crime. No one can have criminal intent to commit an act which is intrinsically innocent, though forbidden by the government. Spooner and a majority of the founders believed in natural law. Natural law prohibits only intrinsically evil acts, such as murder, assault, and robbery. To Spooner, the safety of society, which is the only object of the criminal law, requires that those acts which are understood by mankind at large to be intrinsically criminal should be punished as crimes. Thus, a state which can criminalize virtually any behavior is a tyranny, and juries might rightfully acquit persons who are charged with such offenses. In the Republican government the founders created, government was to be small, with powers limited to a short list of functions derived from the individual's right of self-defense. In such a government, officials are elected by majorities, but the principle of majority rule does not sanction a violation of the individual's rights. Each person enjoys the equal protection of his own rights, while at the same time incurs the obligation to protect the rights of his or her fellows. Nor does majority rule sanction the expansion of the government beyond the powers defined to it by the people. Those are the just powers. Unfortunately, in the course of about 230 years, we have metamorphosed into a democracy, very different from what was intended. The predominant belief today is that whatever the majority says goes. In a true republic, jury nullification would be welcomed and considered necessary. In a democracy, it is not to be tolerated. Jefferson stated in his letter to Jarvis that our judges are as honest as other men and not more so. It should come as no surprise then that it is the judiciary which has led the charge against the practice of jury nullification. In fact, in 1863, both the New York Court of Appeals and the U.S. Supreme Court rejected this practice. The Court of Appeals said that juries must be governed by the instructions of the court upon legal questions as it is in civil cases. The court did not discuss the New York Constitution, its guarantee of trial by jury, or what that guarantee meant at the time it was ratified. The court did note, however, that juries have the power to do otherwise, but the exercise of such power cannot be regarded as rightful, although the law has provided no means in criminal cases of reviewing their decisions, whether of fact or law, or of ascertaining upon which these verdicts are based. Let me translate. In their corrupt, twisted logic, the appeals court said that jury nullification is not rightful, even though the jury does have it within its power to do so, and the law provides no means to stop it from doing so. The Supreme Court performed a similar gymnastics in the case of Spark v. United States, where a divided court held that juries do not have the right to determine the law. The majority, once again, remained silent on the constitutional right to trial by jury, as expressed in Article 3 of the Constitution and in the Sixth Amendment. Excuse me. Yes. They held that the failure by the judge to remind the jurors of their powers was not a basis for mistrial or appeal. However, in his dissent, Justice Horace Gray wrote, if the jury, especially in criminal trials, were obliged to follow the directions of the court in matters of law, well, no necessary or convenient use could be found of juries at all, or to continue trials by them. Justice Gray then quoted Lord Camden from a debate in the House of Lords when he said, if the opposite doctrine were to obtain, trial by jury would be a nominal trial, a mere form. For in fact, the judge, not the jury, would try the man. It was the judge's undoubted duty to state the law, but having done so, the jury were to make both law and fact in their consideration, and to exercise their discretion and discharge their consciences. According to English law, according to our law, the duty of the jury is clear. The jury is to be both a judge of the law and the facts. At the time of the founding in America, this was not so in the colonies. Of the 28 causes for separation listed in the Declaration, 6 were related to abuses by King George III of an Englishman's right to a just trial by a jury of his peers. Having finally secured our freedom, the founders went about setting up a government and establishing a system of laws to live under. In the Constitution they finally adopted, the founders secured the right to trial by jury in Article 3, Section 2. To reaffirm this, they underscored it with several amendments. In fact, 3 out of the first 10 dealt with the right to trial by jury. These are the 5th, 6th, and 7th Amendments. And the founders knew that trial by jury included nullification of unjust laws. Likewise, the states also affirmed this right when creating their own constitutions. 24 states have jury powers explicitly stated in them. Our Maryland Constitution not only affirms this right, but it specifically states in Article 23 of the Declaration of Rights that in the trial of all criminal cases, the jury shall be the judges of the law as well as the fact, except that the court may pass upon the sufficiency of the evidence to sustain a conviction. The colonies also were heavily influenced by the Cato Letters, a series of pamphlets which were circulated in the decades preceding the Revolutionary War. One excerpt makes this point. Only the checks upon the magistrate can make nations free, and only the want of such checks makes them slaves. They are free where their magistrates are confined within the bounds set them by the people, and they are slaves where magistrates choose their own rules and follow their own lusts and humors. Those nations only who bridle their governors do not wear chains. Later, Theophilus Parsons, the Chief Justice of Massachusetts, summed up a remedy to this abuse. He wrote, "The people themselves have it in their power, effectively, to resist usurpation without being driven to an appeal to arms. An act of usurpation is not obligatory. It is not law, and any man may be justified in his resistance. Let him be considered as a criminal by the general government, yet only his fellow citizens can convict him. They are his jury, and if they pronounce him innocent, not all of the powers of Congress can hurt him. And innocent, they certainly will pronounce him if the supposed law he resisted was an act of usurpation." But corruption never stops. It has only grown worse. The more and more power flows into the federal government, the more and more corruption occurs. The more and more people who become dependent upon the government, the corruption spreads even further. If jury nullification was in practice by all of us, this could be stopped. But why isn't it? Well, part is because of the hostility of the courts. The decision in the Sparf case was a green light for trial judges to go mum on the topic, and they did. State's Attorney of Baltimore County, Scott Schellenberger, recently told me that he does not instruct juries on their duty to judge the law, as the Court of Appeals of Maryland has said that it was no longer required. He seemed to be unaware of what the Maryland Constitution has to say on the subject. I made him aware and reminded him that he had taken an oath to support and defend the Constitution, not the Appeals Court of Maryland.
Good for you.
If he was not going to familiarize himself with its contents, he should step down from his office. His ignorance regarding this is not unique. Very few public officials or sworn officers of the law or military have ever read the Constitution, let alone studied it in depth. It is not even required reading in most law schools. Yet the Constitution is deemed to be the supreme law of the land. In their ignorance, they practice law. Then when the bench needs to bring someone up from the minors, they call on this same pool of ignoramuses. Then both lawyers and judges compound their corruption by either refusing to advise the jury of their power to judge the law, or by refusing to seat a juror who acknowledges having such an awareness. Now, what I've shared with you is only a nugget of what you need to know to be a good citizen. There is much that is within our power. I dare say if most of you got a call to serve in a jury today or tomorrow, you probably wouldn't be happy about it. You probably would look for a way out. You're part of the problem if you do that. If you don't serve on a jury and act as an interposition to usurpation of power, then you're part of the problem. So all you need to do, I suggest, is to educate yourself. Now, schools aren't going to teach you this, but there are many who have formed classes to do so, such as the Heritage Foundation, Hillsdale College, and Wall Builders. You can go online and take courses there. Here in Maryland, the group I represent, Institute on the Constitution, also teaches these classes both online and in classroom settings. I teach a course twice a year on the U.S. Constitution. It's coming up. In fact, starting September the 5th. I teach it at Boyle Buick. It'll run from 7 to 9 o'clock in the evening on Thursday evenings, starting on the 5th of September and running for 12 weeks. It is a bargain. It is less than $8 a week for an individual. You can't get much of an education for that unless you come to my class. Much of what you heard this evening came from their course on the jury. So if you're waiting for someone else to solve the problem, it ain't going to get solved. Remember what Edmund Burke said. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Gary. I know we're running a little late, but there's one last topic that we have to cover, and it's one that involves your health, your privacy, and your property. And it is that important that everyone here knows what's going on and knows how to protect those three things. So Hugo Behrman is going to come up and talk to us about smart meters, why and how you can opt out. And it's a big, big issue. Mark the 4th Tuesday on your calendar. It's September 24th. As Hugo closes out the meeting, make sure you're here for the next meeting. But you want to know about this and you want to alert your neighbors to it. Don't miss this. Don't miss
Shouldn't we call our congressman to tell him not to go into Syria?
Yes.
Absolutely.
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 Absolutely. Thank you.
First thing I want to mention to you, that out on the front table there's this pamphlet from the Maryland Smart Meter Awareness Organization. I'm telling hold it upside down. And it will tell you in the yellow copy how to opt out, in case any of you are interested. There you go. All right, BG&E is misleading the public. Some ratepayers are being told that if they opt out, it will cost $100 to $200 plus a monthly fee. Some BG&E personnel have been saying upfront fee would be $300 and the monthly fee $15. But the Maryland Public Service Commission has not made a decision yet. Slide 3. This is a tactic to frighten ratepayers into not exercising their right to deferral. Also, BG&E is no longer referring to smart meter deployment as changing an analog meter for a smart meter. It's now called an upgrade meter. The fact is, the Public Service Commission tasked the 4 state utilities, BG&E, Pepco, Delmarva, and Semco, to submit opt-out cost proposals by July 1st. BG&E submitted its cost proposal early, April 26, as did Pepco. And Maryland Smart Meter Awareness has conducted an initial review of the BG&E opt-out cost proposal and has concerns about BGE's cost figures. Maryland Smart Meter Awareness submitted comments on July 31st, along with the Public Service Commission staff, Office of People's Counsel, and the Maryland Energy Administration. Now, smart meter documents and events. The 2012 Bio Initiative Report issues new warnings on wireless and electromagnetic fields. Report states evidence for risks to health has substantially increased since 2007 from electromagnetic fields, radio frequency radiation, and reports reviewed more than 1,800 new scientific studies. On March 14th, Maryland House of Delegates Economic Matters Committee held a public hearing on no-cost opt-out bill. That was House Bill 1038. The bill was sponsored by Maryland Delegate Glenn Glass with 19 co-sponsors. Maryland's Smart Meter Awareness attended hearing and spoke in support of House Bill 1038. Also, I attended and gave a presentation in support of the no-cost opt-out bill. The Economic Matters Committee placed House Bill 1038 on interim session, summer study for further review. House Bill 1038 or similar no-cost opt-out bill will be reconsidered in the next year's legislative session. Meanwhile, BG&E installs 3,000 smart meters a day in Baltimore and Howard counties and began in Baltimore City in August. BG&E plans to be in Hartford County on 2014. On August 6th, Public Service Commission held a hearing on the cost for opt-out. Maryland's 4 utilities, Pepco, BG&E, Delmarva, Semco, spoke first. They went through their opt-out cost proposals and tried to address the very serious problems that the Maryland Smart Meter Awareness noted in its proposal comments, such as major costs were inappropriate, costs were inflated. They relied on estimates that produced large opt-out fees, but the hard data showed costs were minimal, and that source was BG&E's first quarter report to the Public Service Commission for implementing their smart meter program. Following the hearing, Maryland Smart Meter Awareness was covered by Baltimore Sun, and the president was interviewed by Fox 45 and ABC2 in Baltimore. BG&E estimates about 1% opt-out rate, but the Maryland Smart Meter Association estimates a 5% opt-out rate, since BG&E has only deployed smart meters in a third of its area. This would be the highest opt-out rate for all the United States. Currently, Vermont has the highest opt-out rate, 2.3%, and in Vermont, there's no opt-out fee charged to the ratepayers. Maine's utility in the business case talked about $400 million in savings. The savings turned out to be so meager that the Central Maine Power filed for a rate increase to make up for the losses. The Maine Public Service Commission is now considering an audit of the Central Maine Power books. Complaints about BG&E's Peak Rewards program. Many homes in the BG&E area were outfitted with a Peak Rewards apparatus affixed to the AC compressor. There was a gray box, small gray box, with the BG&E logo on it. And the even though the homeowners did not sign up for the Peak Rewards program. So if you find yourself in this situation, contact Maryland Smart Meter Awareness by email or by mail and let them know. The Smart Meter Advancement Act, H.R. 2685, was introduced on July 17th by 2 Democrats in the U.S. Congress, Jerry McNerney, a Democrat from California, and Matt Cartwright, a Democrat from Pennsylvania. The bill requires all electricity providers to join the smart grid and install smart meters. It also requires appliances with the Energy Star labels, this you need to understand, to include wireless transmitters that cannot be turned off. Take action today to stop it. What can you do? Contact the bill authors. Encourage them to kill the bill. Jerry's phone number is 209-476-8552. Matt's phone number is 202-225-5546. Also contact your congressional reps and urge them to oppose the bill. That's H.R. 2685. Cyber attack. Hackers are increasingly targeting electric, natural gas, and other vital utilities. They are threatening disasters of epic proportions, and the experts say firms are doing too little to guard against them. Government officials have issued warnings with increasing urgency about cyber threats aimed at the energy sector. The health effects. The 2000 Ecolog report was commissioned by T-Mobile and Deutsche Telekom. Being industry generated, it's an excellent resource that links radio frequency radiation with DNA damage and immunological disorders. The American Academy of Environmental Medicine has consistently been outspoken about the health effects of electromagnetic fields and has urged the government and industry to exercise caution regarding smart meters. The American Academy of Environmental Medicine issued a letter with a strong statement about Wi-Fi in schools, as well as wireless exposure around children. Hacking. Yes, it can happen here. February 27th, Central Hudson Gas and Electric in New York was hacked. It's been working with state, federal, and industry groups to investigate this cyber attack, where hackers gained access to 110,000 customer accounts. According to Peter Baer, New York Times, a smart grid will expose utilities to smart computer hackers. A year ago, an unidentified computer intruder tried to penetrate Lower Colorado River Authority's power generation network with 4,800 high-speed login attempts that originated in China. Privacy. Smart meters are a 21st century technology and a 21st century threat. According to the Electronic Frontier Foundation, criminals could find ways to steal the information being passed around in smart grid, smart meter-based communication networks. This means if a utility company has sincerely attempting to protect their customers from invasion of their privacy, there is no guarantee they would be able to do so. No privacy with smart meters. March 1st, BTS TV wraps up the show with a look at smart meters, how they work, and treat and threat they pose to personal privacy. Specifically, the energy corporations can record, monitor, and even control your daily activities in your private residence. Opt out now. Inform your utility company in writing. Send notice or letter, certified mail with return receipt. And when I say send it certified mail with return receipt, these are the two documents I'm talking about. You pick them up at the post office and you mail your letter, certified mail. Now I have copies of the letters. Vicki back there, if you raise your hand, if you'd like a copy of a single family home letter, Vicki has those.
But you need two letters. You've got to send the same letter to the PSC.
Now wait a minute. It's copy furnished PFC. She also has a letter for anyone that lives in a condo unit or townhome that's considered condo community.
Hugo, since it's getting kind of late.
Pardon me?
Since it's getting kind of late, I'm going to put these on the front desk.
Okay, that's fine. That'll be fine.
Grab the right one for your.
Just set them on the front desk, and that way you can pick them up on your way out if you like. It's not too late to opt out. And the sample letter will be handed out or will be on the front table, and you can sign as a ratepayer. Your name and account number is on the monthly utility bill. Be sure to include the date, your utility account number, and address, and send by mail or email.
Tell everybody to take them copies or get, and before they fill it out, make 10 more copies and then fill yours out.
Right. You can do that. Send a letter to BG&E, mail it to BG&E Electric, Smart Meter Deferral BG&E, Post Office Box 1475, Baltimore, Maryland. Or you can email it to smartmeterdeferral@bgne.com. And if you use the email, BG&E will answer. They'll respond back to you. Smart meter update. Once your opt-out letter is sent to your utility company, you need to place a warning sign on your electric meter. And that warning sign looks just exactly like that, and it's in both English and Spanish, because the contractors might be Spanish to come to. Now, one of the things I've done, I took the warning sign and encased it in plastic. I did it at the Office Depot, and then cut around and punched a hole in the top so I can fasten it right on your smart meter, right on your meter, electric meter on your house, not the smart meter. So they do not install a smart meter on your property.
Can they print that off the website, Rico?
Pardon me?
Can they print that off the website?
They can. If they get in the smart meter awareness website, you can find it. Yes.
Okay. And that's on the literature they can pick up, right?
Yes.
The website. Okay.
Yes. Now, at this time, we're going to do we'll just skip through them. We'll do questions and answers if there's any. If anybody has any questions, yes, ma'am.
I called right away when I got the letter.
Pardon me?
I called immediately when I got